Welcome to the Queens of the DMV, Real Talk and Real Estate. I'm your co-host, Cher Castillo, here with my other co-hosts,
Arnita Green,
Ariel Peggy's.
And today we're talking about how to build your multi-unit portfolio. So what do we mean by that? Where do you get started? How do you get started? And ladies, how have you guys gotten started?
I don't have one yet, but I'll actually wait for you to tell me that one.
Well, I started building my multi-unit portfolio actually with this house because it's a 2-unit, regular DC row house, 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms at the top, and then a studio basement apartment at the bottom. And the reason, how that all unfolded was I was actually looking to purchase my second residential property, and I started looking at condos. Mm-hmm. And this is, back in 2004 when condos were just really like the smaller condo units were just popping off. And I started doing the numbers and I was like, it doesn't really make sense for me to be paying this much on a monthly basis when I can buy a house that has a second unit and offset costs and end up paying less on a monthly basis for, property. So that's where I started. But then after that, I was like, okay, now how am I going to leverage this to purchase more property? And that's exactly what I did. I waited to build equity in this house and then buy an additional multifamily unit and just kept doing that, really just leveraging equity to buy additional properties.
Right.
I think also you have to really decide if it's the route you want to take. I think Arnita had spoken about this before, but people contact you to purchase a multi-unit, but they don't really know what all is involved in it and how they're going to proceed after the purchase, or what the rental, revenue would be, or what the cost of the utility. I mean, there's so many things you have to look into to decide if that's the type of investment that you're looking for, and what's the reason you're purchasing the investment. Like, those are the questions that I ask my clients when they contact me about purchasing a multi-unit. I don't personally own a multi-unit. It's just not something in my portfolio at the moment. Do I want one in the future? Sure. But, you have to think about the reasons you would purchase a multi-unit. Your reason was perfect.
Right.
You were ready for the situation, and it was a perfect move for you at the time. You found the right property too. Mm-hmm. You just can't force it when it comes to multi-units. The numbers have to work.
Right.
It has to work.
Numbers and location.
Yes.
Yeah, because you want to buy in a location where you're going to be able to rent that property immediately or pretty immediately. Right. If you're buying in a neighborhood where, it's just really hard to rent, or days on the market to rent are really high, then that may not be the area that you want to buy in.
Right. Mm-hmm. So are more multi-units, what type of areas are the multi-units in?
Well, I think there are in developing neighborhoods that are on the verge where you can see rents increasing.
Okay.
I think location in terms of proximity to, a high walking score, or being able to walk to the metro stop, that sort of thing is going to be really important, because a lot of times renters, especially if you're in a city, they're not necessarily going to want to drive everywhere. They're going to want to be able to walk
or public transportation.
Public transportation. So that's going to be really important as well. Another thing that's going to be important is, it's not necessarily how beautiful the space is, but, is the utilization of the space, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, is is it booming? Like, does somebody want to walk into this space and say, okay, well, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, versus a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom?
Okay.
Just little things like that. You want to make sure that you are having a space that's going to be the most marketable all
Right.
around, just not based on aesthetics.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So you doing your due diligence too. The person needs to do that due diligence. I mean, your agent will definitely help you decide that, but you need to know, when you walking in, what you're specifically looking for in a
Yeah,
multi-unit. Right.
definitely. And I think financing is another major thing, because even if you do have the money down, like, a lender, are you going to use a private lender, or are you
Right.
using, a regular lender? So if you're using private lender, because there's a lot of programs out there right now with private lending that are pretty amazing. They're underwriting the actual property. They're not underwriting you as the borrower. And what I mean by that is they're not looking at your financials, so to speak. They're looking at, what is this property worth? What's the mortgage going to be? Can the rent cover the entire mortgage
Right.
and then some? So if they're underwriting the deal, then it's less about your credit score or what income that you're
Right.
bringing in,
Right.
which is amazing.
Exactly.
Now, that does mean a little bit of higher interest rates versus, a traditional loan where you may be getting 6, 7% right now. You might be at 8 or 9%, but that's the door, opening the door. You can still, after a year or two, refinance and get a better rate.
Can you use a first-time home buyer program?
In some cases, you can. Like with NACA, you can buy a multi-unit. With HPAP, you can buy a multi-unit. Not all first-time home buyer programs allow that, but if it is something that you're interested in, I would definitely say that buyers or investors should ask their lenders or agents about specific programs that would work in a multifamily situation. Yeah.
I remember I did have a buyer she changed her mind though, but she was going through NACA, and that is exactly what she was looking for at first. And then she changed her mind because she just didn't think that that was the first property that she wanted to do. She wanted to have a townhouse first and rent that out instead of having the multi-unit. But she was really for it at first. I think people talked her out of it. A lot of people do talk people out of it. I thought it was still a good way for her to go, but sometimes you got to go with your gut and all what you want to do. Yeah.
And it can be stressful, when you have to be in the right mind space to purchase a multifamily. And what I mean by that is, it's a lot more responsibility than just one unit and renting one unit out. Like,
exactly.
if let's say you have 4 units, and now means you have 4 sets of renters, 4 sets of problems, So, if the pipe bursts in one unit and it's affecting unit 2 or unit 3 or unit 4, whatever, now you have 4 people that are potentially upset. But in addition to that, the expenses that go along with that, are you going to be the property manager? Because in many instances, like a lot of my clients end up saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do property management myself. And that
they always say that, don't they?
You better watch yourself, because
They
there's so
always
many
say that.
laws and regulations that
Yes.
you don't know personally to try to manage your own multi-unit. You have to take a tenant landlord class if you're going to do that. You're also going to have to, take some type of courses to, manage everything. I just think it looks easier than what it is. I've had some buyers reach out and they want a multi-unit as their first property. And I'm like, let's discuss this. Let's talk about this. What are your goals? Why would you choose a multi-unit as your first property? Now, I'm not saying that one can't do that. I'm just saying, like Cher just said, are you in the right mindset? Because it's a lot more involved than what you might be realizing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you want to think about all those things, like a property manager. B, are all utilities included? Or are you covering utilities? I had one client that bought a multi-unit, and he decided that he was going to charge rents with all inclusive of utilities. Well, that turned into a disaster because everybody was keeping their lights on,
Exactly.
running the water, running the electricity. So he was actually in a deficit every month.
Yeah.
And he thought he was charging enough in rent to include, the overall expenses. to have all of that covered, but ultimately it didn't cover everything. So unfortunately, he ended up having to sell the property because it became too stressful of a situation to
I
him.
bet.
I mean, what I had advised from the very beginning was, let's come up with a budget for everything. I don't think all inclusive utility is ever the way.
Right.
Unless
This
it's
is
like
not
a
a
little
resort.
unless it's like a little studio apartment or something where it's like how much can they really use.
Right. It's the
Correct.
square footage.
But you're talking like 4 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms,
Yeah, that's a
that's
lot. He was
potentially
being too nice.
That's
yeah,
risky.
Yeah.
It's
it was
risky.
it was very risky. So those are some things to think about, but also the maintenance of these spaces, right? Like, are you going in there, once a quarter or once a year to make sure, you have pest control, and that's an added expense on a monthly basis. Are you painting in between, leases? That's another expense, because things break all the time. And then are you charging your renters? Are you charging them deductibles every time they call on you to repair something? So there's so many things, that as an investor or multifamily owner that you should think about before you take that plunge into buying an investment property. And that's not to deter anyone. It's just to make sure you understand there's a lot more to it than just buying a regular home.
Exactly. Right. And I think that's the main thing. You just need to weigh out your pros and your cons for both, seeing which option is the best.
Right. And we're not really trying to scare anybody.
Right.
We're really just trying to enlighten people who are interested in that route, because it can be lucrative. It can be a lucrative situation, like I said, with the right numbers and the right location and different variables. You can make some pretty good money off of purchasing a multi-unit, but just be smart about it, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, one of my mentors, he made a really good point to me about, buying multifamily as your first purchase. And I never thought about it this way. But he said that his mentor actually told him to do it because the income that you make on a yearly basis, let's say you're making $4,000 a month, not a profit in gross, $4,000 a month off of your multi-unit times 12 months. Now you're at 48 months. $48,000 a year. So that $48,000 a year ends up being additional gross income for you. So imagine if you're building your portfolio up and you have 4 of these.
Right.
Now you're almost at $200,000 of
amazing.
gross income.
Right.
And banks are looking at you a certain way. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, like they make $100,000 here, but then another $200,000. Now you're at $300,000 a year in gross income.
That makes
so
sense.
it makes a lot of sense to actually start with multifamily. I just don't think that we're taught to do that.
Exactly.
Right.
And there you
that
go.
was my point
Yeah.
earlier. Exactly. Like just not knowing everything that goes into it. Like I said, that sounds very lucrative.
It does, doesn't it?
It sounds very lucrative for the right numbers and the right situation.
Right.
But as you know, in investing, sometimes everything isn't always, peachy and creamy.
Oh yeah, it's not going to be all peaches and cream for sure. There are going to be ups and downs, but I mean, if that's your ultimate goal to start building your portfolio, then, I think you should start whenever you're ready. And that ready may be, calling the lender up to get qualified. It may be getting a collaborative group of people who are like-minded, who also want to buy multi-units and, pooling your money together.
Right.
Because a lot of times we don't even think about stuff like that with investment property. We just automatically think like, oh, how are we going to do it ourselves?
Right.
Or, where are we going to get the money from?
Darn, it's an article too where a group of people in a certain area bought a school.
I saw that.
I wish I had that. I can't think of it. And that was,
I think I saw that.
So many people together. And just like you said, people think that they have to do it by themselves.
Yeah.
And it could be a multiple people, like-minded people that could be doing it with you. So I love that
An
you said that.
investment group, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Investment group, but it could just be you and your
friends.
girlfriend.
Girlfriend,
right.
Yeah.
Or you and your business partners. Like I remember being so intimidated about buying commercial property because no one in my family ever owns commercial property. Like commercial property seemed like something that you bought when you're old, like you've saved up a ton of money and now you can buy commercial space.
Exactly.
But actually, it's not like that at all. In my
Yeah.
first commercial property, I bought with my two business partners. And it ended up being super lucrative. We sold it. It was a property on U Street. We sold it, 10 years after owning it and made $1 million profit that we split.
Excellent.
And it was fantastic to think that, at 27, I was able to do that. But I was so scared to do that. I'm
Right.
not.
Yeah.
I'm not even
Yeah.
pretending. I was like, well, what if this happens, or what if the business fails, or what if
But you did it.
But I did it, and I learned a lot from
Right.
it. And would I necessarily buy property with business partners ever again? Maybe not. But I learned a lot from the
Right.
situation, and that kind of goes into, even though we're talking about multifamily and we pivoted to commercial a little, there's also so many programs out there for buying commercial properties. Like DC Acquisition Fund gives people $250,000 towards purchasing a commercial property.
Yeah.
And there's different multifamily programs out there too, a lot of them that we don't even know about, that different nonprofits will
Right.
also give you money towards the down payment.
Maryland has some good programs too that they do. I've heard some great programs.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good advice. Your mentor, they're on a different level, thinking on a different level, I would say.
Yeah, well, we're not taught to think on that
No,
level, right?
absolutely.
So now that we have the jewels, we need to share those jewels so
Correct.
people can, especially younger generations, can not feel intimidated at early ages to buy. Maybe their first property is going to be a commercial or multi-unit or whatever, but at least they have the information they need to get started.
Right.
And I think, just to kind of wrap that up a little, the first thing you want to think about, like you said, Ariel, is now the right time for me? There's never going to be a perfect time,
Right.
but you will know, like, okay, well, I have an investor lined up, or I have a partner lined up, or I have a group of people lined up. Now we can go to a hard money lender and get a temporary loan and then refinance out in a couple of years. Or, we're going to save this 20% that we need to save and put down and get traditional financing,
Right.
To be able to do that. Whatever step that you're going to take is not, there's no perfect, way to do it, but at least you're taking that first step.
Exactly. What do we think is some advice? I know we've given a lot of information in this window of time. What do you think? What do you think the overall advice is for something for building your portfolio? Like, I know I heard you say something about a mentor. Do you recommend, a buyer who's maybe on the fence or thinking about it, or maybe they purchased their first property and they want to build more, build up their portfolio more? Should they go out and get a mentor, someone who's been successful, in investing or multi-unit acquisitions? Like, I know you said there's no direct correct path, but is the mentor situation the right way to go?
Well, I definitely think having a mentor is always going to be the right way to go, because someone who's done it before, who has the experience, who's, seen the upsides and the downsides of everything, is always going to be helpful. But more than that, sometimes it's worth it to hire a coach, someone that's an investment coach, is that you're actually paying, but it's actually worth the payment because they're coaching you and they don't have a limited amount of time to do that because you're actually paying them to do it.
Correct.
Whereas sometimes with a mentor, no shade to any mentors, but because I might be one of those mentors, you're just super busy and you can't give that 10 hours a month that person may need, or 5 hours a month, or whatever that person needs in terms of coaching them.
Right.
So I think ultimately, whether it's a mentor, a coach, and maybe your coach is YouTube, because some people,
Right.
are exclusively get, their information off of YouTube, which is fine. But there's nothing like actually speaking to someone one-on-one who's actually done it and seen both sides of things.
Let's be real, there's a lot of false information out there too, or stuff that's been fluffed up, I will say. I'm not going to say false per
Right, it
se,
is.
but there's stuff that's been fluffed up and making it look easier than what it is. Or, you have the people that are actually knowledgeable and putting that information out there on,
Right.
on YouTube and TikTok and all of that.
And get in with the right agent too.
Right.
That will steer you in the right direction.
Right.
That have done these properties before, these deals before.
So I heard you say something earlier. You mentioned a mentor versus investment coach. I've heard both terms, but what is the biggest difference between the two? Is the investment coach like getting a percentage of your, like if I invested in a multi-unit, is the investment coach getting a percentage of my net? Or being a mentee, am I just paying, your fee and you're showing me stuff? What's the difference?
So to me, when I say a mentor, I'm thinking of someone that you're not paying, like someone that you're, intermittently having lunch or drinks or meetings with or Zooms, however you meet, that is there to answer your questions and shed light on, maybe different situations that you may be going through. When I say a coach, I'm talking about time and money, because a mentor is more time and a coach is both time and money. So that's the biggest difference to me. And I personally, for me, I feel like sometimes I do need that extra time being coached on certain things. And I don't have a problem paying for that. Because I do feel bad with mentors sometimes. I'm like, okay, am I really going to call them again for the 8th time this month and take another hour of their time? I know they're busy as me, if not busier.
Exactly.
So I don't want to bog them down with that. Whereas a coach, I don't really feel bad about it because I'm paying you.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there because some people don't realize or know the difference between the two. Obviously both you use as a, stepping stone to kind of build whatever it is that you're trying to start. But I just wanted to get the difference between the two, the difference, just to see, what is preferred maybe and what is more useful. I guess it's personal, what your personal need is.
Yeah, and with a coach, I haven't done specifically investment coaching before. Like I've done flip coaching before, and sometimes people will see the prices on flip coaching and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't afford that. Like I don't have that money to give you." And then they'll go ahead and they'll do a flip themselves
and need you.
And then not only just
they'll
need
lose
me,
their shirt.
they'll lose their shirt.
Yeah.
And they'll be in debt like $60,000-$70,000. And I was like, oh, that $15,000 fee didn't seem so bad.
Exactly.
Huh? But you have to look at the bigger picture of things, like you have to spend money to make money.
Absolutely.
And
say that again.
Correct.
You got to spend money to make money, girl.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always feel good in that initial check that you're writing out. And you may not see the immediate benefit of it, but long term, it's probably saving you a lot of money because that person has probably made all the mistakes and are going to save you from making those mistakes that can be very costly mistakes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bingo.
All I can think about when we talk about this topic, I maybe fall asleep at night with the TV on and I wake up to this loud screaming and hollering, and it's the people on TV talking about joining an investment group. Now all you need is $20,000 to join and they'll show you the ropes and blah blah blah. I'm like, and I actually know people who have went to these seminars, and I'm not knocking anybody, but I have seen this where they just pay the money and nothing happens after that. And then that person is actually using their money to invest.
Oh my God.
So, you have these people who are posing as investment gurus, and you're going to a weekend, seminar in Miami or something, and they're going to show you everything. And maybe it's just a book and see you on your way, have fun in Miami, but I got your 20,000 and you have 100 people at this event.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's minimum. I've seen like 200-300 people in a ballroom thinking that they're about to learn how to become this super investor. And so that's why I asked you the question about coaching and mentorship. People are getting it mixed up. No one's going to have you pay $20,000 to sit in a seminar and learn everything there is to learn. You're still going to need guidance.
Right.
You're still going to need a coach or whatever avenue you take. But, you know, some of these folks on TV are advertising, you know, people to get into real estate and become this huge millionaire. And really, all they did was just take your registration fee and give you a book.
Yeah. So
stuff that you can find online.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would definitely have to be careful in terms of who you're hiring. You know, do your due diligence and make sure you call their references and see what their track record is, because
I'm glad you said that.
It has to be. Like, you have to look at the track record. Like, okay, you're multifamily coaching. That means you better own some multifamilies or have owned a portfolio of some sort. So I can believe the information that you're sharing with me, because if you haven't, then how can I really know that you know what you're doing? Yeah. And the references is a big thing, because I know, you know, for me, I've interviewed investment coaches before, and that's the first thing I do, you know, but beyond Googling, I'm calling their references to find out what their experience has been like. Did they really spend 100 hours with them over that, you know, year-long period? You know, and of those 100 hours, what did they gain from that?
Right.
So it's a full interview process. If you're going to be spending $20,000-$30,000 on someone, you want to know that you're going to get your money's worth.
Definitely.
Right. Absolutely. I just wanted to say that because you have a lot of people like doing master classes and, you know, all these different things, and they just don't have the experience to guide or lead anyone or have enough of it. So, you know, we've put a couple of different tips out there. Is there anything else you guys want to add?
Share.
No, I mean, I think it's just, you know, it's always a great time to start building your portfolio. Mm-hmm. There's never a time that's going to be too soon or too late, whether you're 20 or you're 70. Like, if it's something that you want to do, just definitely take the time, you know, do your research, contact a good realtor, preferably us.
Yes. I'm building my portfolio now.
Yeah.
And thanks to share.
Right. And you know, make sure you're interviewing the right lenders too. You know, do both the private and traditional lending. Right. You know, see which one works best for you, and additionally, same thing with the collaboration piece. You know, maybe it is pooling funds together with a group of friends and family and starting out that way, and then growing from that.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Well, I think that's all, ladies, for today. This is Cher Castillo signing off on the Queens of the DMV with my co-hosts,
Arnita Green
and Ariel Peggies.
Until next time.